I just turned 23, and my best friend Angela wanted to do something for me. We ended up going to Carmel Beach in California. Honestly, before all that, I just wanted the day to myself, to do nothing, because a week before that, my boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now, Mark, broke up with me. We used to always celebrate my birthday together, so this was the first time in a long time I'd be spending it without him. Angela wanted to cheer me up, so she went ahead and booked one of those ultra beachfront villas. There was no way I could have said no to that. When we got there, the place was exactly like it looked on the website. We settled in, and I actually enjoyed that first hour, just lying on the bed, not thinking about Mark, not thinking about anything, really. Later on, we walked down to the beach, maybe 15 minutes from the villa, cutting through this little trail with seagrass on both sides. When we got there, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced. The sky was doing that thing where it's orange and pink and almost purple all at once. We sat there for about 30 minutes, just watching the sunset.
That's when we noticed a man walking by us. I say noticed because he'd already walked past us once before, about 5 minutes earlier, and I hadn't thought much of it the first time. He had on dark shades, no shirt, looked to be in his 40s, and by the looks of him, he was Hispanic. Now he was standing right in front of us, less than a foot away, his backside literally blocking our view. I told him in Spanish, "Excuse me, you're blocking our view." He didn't respond, didn't even turn his head. Angela stood up and tapped him on the shoulder, and that's when he said, in English, "Oh, sorry, I'll move, just watching the sunset." But he didn't move, not right away. Angela's face turned red. She gets like that when she's annoyed. I told her we could just move somewhere else, even though the beach was starting to fill up. It was getting cold anyway, so a little later we decided to wrap it up and head back to the villa. On our way back, walking up that same little trail, we spotted the same Hispanic man walking toward us from the opposite direction. This time, he had a black shirt on, which I remember thinking was strange, since he'd been shirtless less than an hour before. Angela murmured under her breath, "Why is this creep still around, by himself?" I didn't say anything back, just kept walking, trying not to make it obvious we'd noticed him. We got about a foot away from him, and then, all of a sudden, he lunged at Angela. I screamed and fell back onto the sand. He pulled out a knife and stabbed her in the stomach. It happened so fast, faster than I can even explain it. 1 second we were walking, and the next she was on the ground. I screamed for help at the top of my lungs over and over. Angela dropped to the ground, and the man fled into the dark, just gone, like he'd never been there. I ran out toward the main path, and luckily saw 2 other women nearby who heard me screaming. We called 911 right away, and within minutes, Angela was rushed to the ER. She survived, barely, by some kind of miracle. The doctors told us later how close it had been. She was discharged about 4 weeks later after multiple surgeries. The guy was never found, even with a full description given to police, even with them going through footage from nearby businesses. Angela's doing better now after surviving something that brutal from a complete scumbag. I'm thinking about all this because my birthday's coming up again in a few weeks, and every year around this time, it all comes back to me. Angela still goes to the beach. She's always been tough like that. I still wonder what his motive even was, why he'd attack us for absolutely no reason at all. I'm just glad my best friend is alive and healthy. I'm a single mom, so for most of Juan's life, I was working 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. Because of that, he spent a lot of time with my sister. Juan had been diagnosed with autism when he was 3, and he needed a lot of structure and patience. My sister was incredible with him, and there were weeks when he stayed with her more than he stayed with me. I always felt guilty about that, but I didn't really have another choice. A few months before his 10th birthday, he became obsessed with going to the beach. Every time I'd pick him up from my sister's house, he'd ask if we were still going. He watched videos of people running from the waves and building sand castles, and he talked about it constantly. I kept telling him, "Yeah, buddy, on your birthday." Every time I said it, he'd smile like he'd never heard it before. We left early that Saturday morning and drove a little over 2 hours to Santa Monica Beach. I packed sandwiches, juice boxes, towels, sunscreen, and a change of clothes. The whole drive, Juan couldn't stop smiling. He kept pointing out the window every time he saw a palm tree or caught a glimpse of the ocean, and by the time we finally pulled into the parking lot, he was practically bouncing in his seat. The beach was packed. Families had umbrellas set up everywhere, kids were throwing footballs around, people were lined up at the snack stands, and music was coming from portable speakers. It was exactly what you'd expect on a warm weekend. We found a spot for our towels, but before I could even set everything down, Juan grabbed my hand and said, "Water." I laughed because I knew there was no point asking him to wait. We walked straight down to the shoreline and spent the next 20 minutes chasing waves. Every time one rolled in, he'd run toward it, then turn around laughing and sprint back before it reached his feet. That's when I remembered the digital camera I'd bought just for his birthday. I'd left it in the car. I really wanted pictures that weren't just taken on my phone, so I walked Juan over to one of the beach snack shacks. I bought him a bag of chips and a bottle of water, then asked the guy working there if he'd mind keeping an eye on him for just a couple of minutes while I ran to the parking lot. The employee looked over at Juan, who was sitting quietly eating his chips, and said, "Yeah, that's fine." I thanked him and hurried off. It couldn't have taken me more than 5 or 6 minutes. When I got back, I immediately noticed something was wrong. The little bar attached to the snack shack had turned into complete chaos. 2 really big guys were throwing punches at each other. Chairs had been knocked over, and people were crowding around trying to watch. Someone was yelling for security, and the employee I'd spoken to was completely distracted, looking toward the fight. I didn't stick around to see what happened. I grabbed Juan's hand, told him we were going somewhere quieter, and we walked farther down the beach.
Once we found a calmer spot, I finally pulled out the camera. For the next hour, I took pictures of everything. Juan holding up shells he'd found, Juan laughing while he ran from the waves, Juan carrying his shoes because he didn't want sand inside them. I even filmed a few short videos of him splashing around near the water. Looking back now, I don't think there's anything I own that's harder to look at than those pictures. After a while, I heard yelling again. This time it was farther down the beach. A group of people had gathered around something, and a few others started running in that direction. I couldn't tell what was happening, but I remember looking over, then looking back at Juan, and thinking maybe we should just head home. It wasn't panic or anything like that. I just suddenly didn't feel like staying anymore. I walked over to Juan and told him I thought we'd continue his birthday at home. I'd promised him cake with my sister later anyway, but the second I said we were leaving, he started crying. With Juan, once he got upset, it usually took a while to calm him down. I sat beside him, rubbed his back, and told him we'd stay 1 more hour. After a few minutes, he settled down and went back to playing with a couple of kids he'd met earlier. I stayed close, sitting on our towel maybe 6 feet away with the camera in my hands. I kept taking pictures every now and then while he played. I remember checking the time and thinking we'd probably leave in another half hour. Juan suddenly turned around and started running toward me with the biggest smile on his face. It looked like he wanted to show me something, and I lifted the camera to take another picture. I don't remember seeing the ATV first. I remember hearing people yell, then I looked up and saw it coming across the sand much faster than it should have been. The driver tried to turn at the last second, but there wasn't enough room. Everything happened so fast that my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. 1 second, Juan was running toward me, and the next, he was on the ground.
I screamed and dropped the camera without even realizing it. By the time I reached him, people were already running over from every direction. I picked him up and kept calling his name, but he wasn't responding. A woman nearby was telling me to put him down so the paramedics could help when they arrived, but I couldn't let go of him. Someone had already called 911, and within minutes the ambulance was there. The paramedics worked on him right there on the beach before loading him inside. I rode with them to the hospital, but deep down, I think I already knew.
A doctor came into the waiting room a while later and told me Juan had suffered severe brain trauma and internal bleeding. They'd done everything they could, but he had died almost immediately after the impact. I don't remember much after that. I don't remember driving home or even walking out of the hospital. The next few weeks are mostly a blur. Later, I found out the ATV wasn't supposed to be driving through that part of the beach at all. There was an investigation, lawyers got involved, and people kept telling me it wasn't my fault. I heard those words over and over, but they never changed how I felt. His birthday cake sat in my sister's refrigerator for almost a week because neither of us could bring ourselves to throw it away. I still have that little digital camera. Every photo and every video from that day is still on it. Sometimes I tell myself I'm only going to look at one picture, but I always end up watching the videos too. The last clip is only a few seconds long. Juan is running toward me, smiling, and you can hear me laughing behind the camera. Then someone starts yelling in the background. The camera jerks and the recording ends. I haven't been back to a beach since. People tell me no parent could have seen something like that coming, and maybe they're right. But every time I think about that day, it's never the accident that plays over in my head first. It's all the little decisions that came before it. Going back to the car for the camera, letting him stay one more hour, sitting a few feet away instead of standing beside him. Those are the moments I keep replaying, and I don't think they'll ever stop.
I've never told this story publicly before. I'm gonna keep my name out of it. Not because I'm ashamed of what happened. I was a child. There was nothing I could have done. But because this involves a family that lost someone, and I have no right to make their grief into something with my name attached to it. I'll just say I'm in my late 40s now, and I've carried this since I was 7 years old. I was 7, maybe 8 years old. My family used to go to this place in South Georgia during the summers. It wasn't a real beach, it was a man-made lake. Some guy dug out a big pond, dumped a load of beach sand around the edges, stuck some palm trees in the ground, and started charging admission. People would pull up, park, set up their grills, let their kids swim. It was that kind of place, unofficial, a little rough around the edges. They had a swatter slide that nobody should have been allowed on, but kids rode it anyway and got hurt and came back the next weekend. We always parked in the same spot, right in front of this little island. It wasn't much, just a clump of sand, maybe 30 yards off the shoreline. The water between the shore and the island came up just above my head at the deepest point, so I'd bounce out, push off the bottom, come up for air, push off again. I wasn't the strongest swimmer, but I could make it to that island that way. I'd done it plenty of times. One afternoon, I was bouncing out toward it. Just another regular day. Sun out, people grilling, the usual noise of a crowded summer spot. My foot came down, and I felt a face. I know that sounds like something I'm exaggerating looking back, but I'm not. I was a kid, and I knew immediately what I had touched, the bridge of a nose under my toe. And then, as I pushed off, I felt it, fine hair waving in the water between my toes as I kicked up. I made it to the island and sat down and didn't move for a long time. I was 7 or 8 years old. I didn't process it the way an adult would. I just sat there on that little clump of sand and stared at the water and didn't go back in. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know what I would have said. I barely knew what I had felt. I just knew I wasn't going back in that water. At some point I heard it, a parent's voice cutting through all the noise of the park, calling a name, then another voice picking it up, and then more. The kind of calling out that starts as concern and shifts into something else within minutes. The whole energy of the place changed. People standing up from their lawn chairs, conversation stopping, everyone looking around. They were looking for a little boy. I sat on that island and listened to him calling his name, and I still didn't say anything. I was a child. I didn't connect what my foot had felt to what was happening on the shore. Or maybe some part of me did and just couldn't hold it. They pulled his body out of the water right in front of that island. I watched it happen from where I was sitting. I don't remember much about what came after. I remember my parents getting me, the drive home, none of the details, just the image of them pulling him out and the sound of his parents, and the way everything went quiet in that park the way it does when something happens that can't be undone. I'm in my late 40s now. I've never forgotten that day. Not the water slide, not the palm trees, not the sound of his name being called across that water. What I remember most is the hair. That specific feeling of fine hair waving between my toes in the water, a sensation I felt once for less than a second and have carried every day since. I stepped on him. I don't say that looking for sympathy. I say it because it's true, and because I've never said it out loud to anyone, and because some things don't get lighter no matter how many years you put between yourself and them. I just didn't know what I was feeling. I wish I had.